TV.
No, that's what I first thought. When I first drove in here, I thought, geez, they're going to have good TV reception here. But no. Now this facility was originally built in 1981, and it was originally built by the ANU, the Australian National University in Canberra. They were given a government grant in the late 1970s at the time by the New South Wales state government of about $1.9 million just to investigate the feasibility of solar power, because very little had been done with solar energy anywhere around the world up until the 70s. And the ANU were actually leading the way, so they were handed the money to have a crack at it and see what they could come up with. Now this is a model of the original dishes. They're going to look a bit different to what we see when we go around the back there this morning, but I'll explain a little bit about that as we go along. Now out the back there we're going to find 14 of these 5-metre concave parabolic dishes with over 2,000 mirrored tiles on the inside of each one of them. And when this place was built, it was purely experimental. No commercial value to it at all, or so they believed at the time. And when they built it, it worked a bit better than they expected it to, and the Yanks straight away copied it. Built a very similar project to this in the middle of a desert in Arizona, and the Spanish tried a very similar project at the same time in the middle of one of their deserts. But as I said, when this place was built, it was experimental, but it would have been cutting-edge technology for its time. We look at it now as to be old, but back then it would have been way out there. Now, all 14 of these dishes, when they were operational, actually tracked the sun. So they started in the east when it first came up of a morning, follow it round through the north and finish in the west when it went down overnight. Then take about an hour or so to get themselves back waiting for the sun the next day. But not only did they track the sun, they actually kept the sun directly in a focus point. So the dish itself was pointing directly at the sun the whole time. Now you can imagine we're coming close, only a couple of days away from our shortest day. Sun's nowhere near as high in the sky this time of the year as it is in the middle of summer. So that back then was done with a computer program. Now you think where computers were back in 1981, to have all 14 of these dishes in exactly the right spot every minute of the day, 365 days of the year would have been no mean feat. And all the computers that controlled it are still in this middle control room here. You'd probably do the same thing on your iPhone today, but that's what they used back then to control it, that room full of computers. Now the reason these things tracked the sun and kept it in that focus point the way they did was because of the way these things actually worked initially. These things were called a thermal conductor. So what they were trying to do by pointing the dish directly at the sun the whole time was, with the concave dish and the mirrored tiles, was basically create a focus point right out in front of these dishes about where those coils are. And that focus point out the front there reached temperatures in excess of 500 degrees. So what they did through the coils on the end of those struts was basically just pump water through it. And you can imagine what happens to water at 500 degrees. It boiled, became steam, steam was pumped back under pressure, that ran a steam engine, that turned the generator, that produced the power. Steam driven solar to start with. Now as I said, when this place was built, it was purely experimental. But when they put it up, as I said, they worked far better than they expected it to. Every one of these dishes pumped out the equivalent of 32 kVA at 50 hertz every day. So they were producing a lot of electricity from here. And all they were doing with it was basically running their computers, running any lighting they had in here at the time, and the rest of it they were storing in big battery packs in this end container here. Now you can imagine 14 of those things pumping out that much electricity, they pretty quickly filled all those batteries. And then they had nothing they could do with the power they were producing. So they basically started just putting it to ground, just wasting it to get rid of it. So they said, well hang on, rather than wasting it, town's got no power. Why don't we sell it to them? So they connected the pub, the shop, the school, the hall, the clinic, the post office, and about 4 or 5 other private homes in the middle of town here actually purchased the power that was being produced from here. Now I said the other two in the middle of a desert, and sometimes you can argue this one is too, but because we sold the power from here, it actually made the whitecliffs facility the first commercial solar power station in the world. No one else had they done it. Now they ran like that with the steam for a short time, from 1981 until 1987. And then the steam side of it became old technology fairly quickly, so it got removed, that strut got taken out, the coils got taken away, and out in front of that focus point then they put a stainless steel box. Now inside the stainless steel box they put 2 photovoltaic cells. And photovoltaic panels is what's all over the top of the pub down there, probably what you guys have got on your van, probably what most people have got in their homes today, is photovoltaic panels. So 1987 here was the start of pretty much what we've got today. So they ran like that from 1987 right through until 2005 when they shut this place down. And to their credit, we got power here in Whitecliffs on the grid in 1993. So they no longer sold the power from here once it came in on the grid. It was more reliable the other way. But selling the power from here was a benefit they never expected anyway. So they kept it going for another 12 years because it was the data that it was producing was what they wanted. And the data that this place produced between 1987 and 2005 is the reason that we have what we have in the way of solar in the world today. It's that important to the history of solar. And it's not just me saying it too, anyone can say that, but when we go out, I'll point it out here, it's on the end wall, it's actually been given an Australian engineer's historic marker, the same as the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Snowy River Scheme. Not many of them headed out in Australia, I can tell you. Now the reason they shut it down in 2005 was they were moving away from the dish style, more to the panels that we've got today. And the thing is with this place being experimental too, there was no parts out there for it. So when one of these dishes got to the point where it broke down and couldn't be used, it just sat there until another one did. And then they try and make one out of the two. Now apparently they got down to 5 operational dishes in 2005 and said really not much more we can get out of it. It's pretty much run its race, it's basically reached its life. So all they did then in true Australian style was lock these 4 containers, lock that front gate and walk away from it. Left it here to rot. Now we as a community in the last 6 years just believe it's way too important for that. We love it to be here for our kids and their kids to be able to come out here and have a look at the history of solar, because that's pretty much what this place is. So through the ANU for a start, now our own committee that we've formed, we're actually applying for and receiving a little bit of funding just to reserve it. We did think when we started that we might have got a couple of dishes operational so you could see how they worked and everything. I just don't think that's going to happen now. It's going to take a lot of money. Pretty much got to go back and start from scratch, and they're just not handing out that sort of money. So at the moment, if we can just preserve it, keep it here, and maybe we might get some private backing later on and be able to do some bit more for it. But as long as we can keep it. So only thing I will ask you to fill out for me today, if you wouldn't mind, please, is the visitor book on the